I'm Catherine Sheeran, host of the podcast Horse Tales with Cat. My guest today started his career in Halton Hills, but spent several years south of the border to hone his craft and gain some mileage. Sean Jobin has been solidly racking up wins at the 3-star and 5-star levels for the last 3 years. He won the Canadian Show Jumping Championship at the Royal Winter Fair in November of 2023 aboard his mount, Lico. He won his first class in the international ring at Spruce Meadows on his first day of his first visit there in June of 2024 aboard his mount, Orcuga. After a solid year in 2025, he went on to win 3-star Grand Prix at WEC in Ocala in January 2026 on his newer mount, Grand Dame. More recently, I had the pleasure of seeing him bring home the victory at the 3-star Grand Prix at WEC in March aboard Orcuga. Sean, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Catherine. Thank you.
I'd love to start with, how did you come to the sport? And when did you actually decide this was going to be your future?
My mom made the introduction for me. She did a lot of 3D eventing growing up, and she was really big into horses. She made the introduction for me. She groomed a lot as well. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I remember as a kid, worked a lot wherever I was riding on the weekends, go to school, and then the weekends go out and muck stalls wherever I was at, and just gradually rode a lot of horses, had a lot of fun with it. By the time I turned 18, I was just spending so much time riding horses and doing that it seemed like a logical move to make it my profession.
And who were your earlier influences as far as trainers?
I think lucky that I grew up and there were so many great riders and trainers in Ontario who paved the way for me. I always got to see Ian Miller on Spruce Meadows and McLean Ward. It was a great time in show jumping, I think, to grow up in. I think the list is long there for sure.
And who were you training with in those early years?
So I started with Jackie Tattersall for the most part and did a lot of time with Mike Grenier as well, which was fantastic. Mike gave me a lot of opportunities growing up. Spent some time at King Ridge with Hugh Graham too. Then I went down south to the US.
Well, and I was quite fascinated to see that you went down as the pro at 18 when you went down to Florida. Is that correct? You were basically the head trainer at Fox Ridge Farms?
Yeah, I think I started at 20, but it was definitely an early start for sure.
And how did that partnership develop?
I think that was through a King Ridge connection there.
And tell me a little bit about what a day-to-day looked like at Fox Ridge Farms when you first went down. Because as you said, 20 is pretty early to be starting off.
Started just with sales, right? Came in with a bunch of horses there, mostly doing low jumpers and low hunters, and it's mostly selling horses, and gradually began doing a lot more coaching as well. And through some time after kind of developing the string, selling a few, buying some more young ones there, ended up getting a little bit lucky with a couple good ones, which was awesome, and just gradually developed over time.
So I know a couple of your mounts, from what I've read, are owned by Fox Ridge. Is that correct? Is that Lico and Orcuga?
Well, they're still the owners of one of them,
Okay.
and then the other one's Antrim.
I'm just trying to connect all the pieces.
Yeah.
You forged out then on your own these last couple of years, both in, I know that you're working from your home farm, Antrim, when you're back in Canada, and then down in the States, you've also started your own business per se. Is that correct?
I've had the US business for quite a while. It's nice. We base out of Ocala, Florida. And then up in Canada, that's a new venture. I just really started in earnest last year. I'm so really excited about that. The idea that, or the vision that I have going there is it's creating a high performance organization to serve the Ontario area. Just looking to bring back some of the organization and the expertise that's necessary for top sport, especially modern show jumping, bring it in Ontario and share it.
Well, and one of the things that I found particularly interesting was that you have been working in conjunction with Dr. Tim Warden, who I believe he's got a PhD. Is that correct?
Yes, I met Tim in 2016. I was attending, it was a U25 riders meeting in Ontario, and Tim was giving a lecture there about applying some of the principles of sports science and biomechanics to show jumping. And we ended up chatting a lot after that. And again, over some time there, we decided to put some of those principles in action the best we could. And it's really exciting. And I think that was sort of a turning point, I think, at least in my career, when we were able to make a push out of mostly national Grand Prix and shows into the international rings.
How does that work on a practical level? Maybe walk our listeners through what does that mean?
I think it's definitely wide-ranging in scope, and you're starting to see it a lot more too in like broadcasts and things too for top sport, right? I think the veterinary side is very good in most top show jumping teams. I think a lot of people are really familiar with that and the science and everything that goes into veterinary medicine. For the sports science side, when we're looking more at the biomechanics side or the analytics side, we start with just data tracking, right? So we have a lot of spreadsheets that track each individual horse, their performance records, and their strengths and weaknesses over large data sets. And then from the biomechanics side, that goes down to a lot of slow motion video capture, analytics on how a horse uses its body to perform a jump, things a horse could work on or do better, or things the rider can do better to influence the horse's jump.
Is there any specific measurement, or are they wearing electrodes at any point to let you know what is
Yeah,
happening?
so we've definitely used a lot of wearable technologies. They're a lot of fun to use, and one tech we've used quite a lot is a logo that's a biomechanic measurement device. We'll put that on just to get baselines of especially newer horses, and that tracks some really interesting stuff like stride cadence, jump angles, angle of the jump on takeoff, landing, strike power, like the G-forces the horse is going through. So there's a lot of really interesting data you can collect out of that for sure.
I would think it makes sense just because each horse is different. So that's why I was quite fascinated to get an opportunity to speak with you about it, because I feel like if you can measure something, then absolutely that should be able to impact how you're training that horse and what's going to work best for that horse. And I would imagine it might even have an impact in terms of longevity, knowing what exercises are going to be issues for them on a chronic level, would it not?
Yeah, I think we are seeing the sport evolve for sure. You're seeing a lot of really top horses right now, especially into their late teens, that are actually performing at a really high level, right? Like John Whitaker just won a big blast on a 20-year-old horse. That was cool to see. Amanda Derbyshire had a really good winter there on an 18-year-old horse in Wellington, right? So it's exciting to see what can be done, especially to help improve your horse's longevity in this sport, which is demanding physically from them, right? I think there's definitely a ton of factors that go into it on kind of a personal level for each horse, right? And then as well from any other factor you can think of.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about your mounts. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about Edness and how you've been able to keep that horse. I mean, 17 isn't old, but it's not young when you're doing the level of height that you are doing with that horse.
So Edna certainly would qualify as in the twilight of his career, right? In his late teens. He was one we got later in his career as well. He obviously had a very good career with Mark Huitziger out in Europe, and then he was imported to the US, and he had some riders in the US. And one of the ideas behind trying to find some market inefficiencies in show jumping was the demand for horses past kind of 12, 13 is pretty low, right? So we made a conscious effort to try and target some horses that we felt were older in their careers, but still had some capabilities for top sport. And our hope was that through load management, through any other practices we can help, we could extend the careers of these horses and still get solid resorts out of them.
Sorry, I have to interject because I was going to say that's so lovely on so many levels because
Yeah.
it gives for the horse just the value from their perspective, the fact that they get to keep going doing something that they probably love, but yet you're protecting them also and not using up all their jumps.
I think for sure with modern show jumping, absolutely, it's the case that a horse will certainly tell you when he's done with show jumping. It's really not possible nowadays to be competitive with a horse that that doesn't want to do it. And then so the question becomes for a lot of these horses, especially horses that really love show jumping, is, well, how do we make sure that their bodies can handle the stress factors that come in with competing in show jumping at high levels? One of the nice things that I think does come out of show jumping, if we look at more on a biometric side, is I don't think it's as taxing physically as maybe some other horse sports, right? In comparison to maybe racing or other things, the physical exertion is for a shorter period of time. It's only 70, 80 seconds typically, right? And then I think there's also balancing that with the mental side of it for the horses too, shipping, transport to new locations that you have to balance as well with the horses, right? I think all of that, when you're looking back at the load management there, and I think you're seeing it a lot at the top sport with really successful teams too. It's picking and choosing the right events for your horses and weighing on all the different factors that come in, whether that's how much downtime you're trying to give, working through your training cycle so that you make sure you're building the horse up enough physically to be prepared for top competition where you can peak in performance, right? Making sure your horse has enough downtime afterwards and making sure you're also factoring in the travel on the horse as well.
It's so lovely to hear you say that, just because I feel like people forget that even just getting on that trailer is stressful for an animal and the change in environment and all of that. So the fact that you're even just factoring that into your program to me makes perfect sense.
And being based out of North America has a lot of great advantages. One of the disadvantages to North America is the time period, right? We tend to have to travel a lot more for our shows. So I think in comparison to competing on, say, like a European circuit, you really have to take that into consideration. Having said that, when you're in the Florida circuit, like the winter months, it's a lot nicer too at the end of the day, because then you can sort of set up your team and you really don't have those travel figures to account for, especially for a long circuit where we are down in Ocala. We have World Equestrian Centre, which has great facilities all around. It really depends on what part of the year you're in and what shows you're trying to go to.
Well, and I would say that WEC has been a game changer for so many riders and trainers, to your point, because you can stay put, not have to be traveling. It gives you better quality of life, as well as, I think, a better experience for your horse. I also wanted to talk about your other mounts because, as I said, what I thought was interesting was that you're a rider that has had wins on several different mounts. You're not a rider that has just been consistently good with one. That speaks to me a little bit about you as a rider, that you're able to get the best out of different types of horses. Let's talk a little bit about Arkuga, because Arkuga seems to be your real speed horse. And I thought it was kind of cool that you had gone to Spruce Meadows, and from what I heard in one of the articles, and this really spoke to me, was when you got off the plane and landed in Calgary, the first thing you did was go and check out the International Ring at Spruce Meadows. And that just said a lot about just your character being that excited to be there for the first time. And then you walk into the ring with Arkuga and you win the first class. That had to be such a big rush. So tell me a little bit about your partnership with Arkuga and that whole experience.
Arkuga we've had for a couple years now, about 2.5. So it's definitely in the longer category of partnerships at this point, I can't say, but it still feels new. And I think he was one where his speed is obvious and ability is obvious, but he actually took me a long time to really, I felt, figure out. He did really well out in Europe. And for me, it was always trying to balance the speed he could have with the scope he could have too. Especially in the first 2 years, there was a lot of like ups and downs, and you feel like you made a lot of progress, and then you struggled. And I thought this winter was actually a pretty good breakthrough for me finally on him, because we finally found a level of consistency that stretched through the whole 3-month winter circuit. And that, so to have a bunch of wins there too was phenomenal, and some podiums with him as well in the international events. But actually, I really love bringing Arkuga to Spruce more than anything, because he is a bit old school with that Arco type of ride, and Spruce is definitely, it's not as careful, I'd say, as a lot of venues are nowadays, but it requires a horse to be very, very bold and carry a lot of pace and really move across the jumps. And that's one thing that our cougar really excels at. So I'm looking forward to hopefully bringing it back to Spruce again this year. Yeah, to your point on Spruce Meadows, right? Just being a Canadian kid growing up too, and always watching on TV and watching Ian Miller and Eric Lamaze and these huge Canadian riders go and compete and win in that big ring. It leaves a mark on you, right? Never really gotten a chance to. Everyone kind of assumes you're Canadian, you must show at Spruce Meadows, but being East Coast, right? It's so hard to get out there. It's hard to get the horses that are capable of jumping it. And it's even harder to get the logistics, the support people you need to help fund heading out there. The trailer ride is tough and the entry fees and everything. So it took me a long time to actually be able to make my first debut out there, but it was so cool. It felt like hitting a home run at your first at bat, right?
No kidding.
In Fenway or something, right? I think that win actually really sticks out in my mind as one of the coolest I've ever had.
And I did want to ask you about Arkuga as a ride, because from what I've observed in videos, he's not so easy in the mouth. Is that just my impression, or is that part of the challenge with consistency with him? It looks like you're very educated in your hand, and it looks like you have to be, because it looks like he's not so easy in terms of that part of the management.
Yeah, that was my biggest difficulty for the first couple of years. I think I really worked hard. I was trying to play around with the bit and my own ride and how to react to him because he's not, like I said, he's not like most of the horses I've ridden. So I think, again, I rode him with regular bits. I tried him with a whole bunch of other things. I tried him in a hackamore for a while and without a bit, right? And there's a lot of, honestly, just trial and error to figure that out. And I actually just finally settled on a bit that Edness goes in. It's a Pelham, but it's got a straight bar on it. And I thought it was very simple. He ended up just really liking it. And then it just allowed me to hold a little bit of pressure in his mouth just on takeoff in the air without distracting him. And he seemed to actually accept the contact quite well, even better than the Hackamore or the other bits I had. So I was like, well, this seems to be really working at home, and gave it a try this winter, and it really worked out well for him. It took me a while to kind of figure that out, but he seems to be really happy with it.
Well, certainly the class that I saw you in that you won in March, it was a very solid ride, and it looks like you figured him out very well at this point. I think it's just kind of cool that even you talking about you've worked at it just shows your level of patience, which I think is so important nowadays. And that's something I've heard from a lot of seasoned riders, is that a lot of times nowadays people are in a rush. So the fact that you're just saying that you've done it this way says that you've learned that skill, and I think it's going to keep you honest in your future.
The rush in show jumping is the toughest thing, right? Because I think as a competitor and as an athlete, you want everything and you want it now a lot of the times, right? And I think this was definitely the toughest thing for me to really figure out, especially earlier in my career, was show jumping is just so different than any sport. It's so different than any horse sport too, I find. Horses take a very long time to develop and learn the skills they need to compete in high level show jumping. There's so much training that's involved in it. I think for me, if I was an athlete in any other sport, right, I'd be considered pretty old at 33. But it is funny when you look around, you realize so many fantastic riders, really, they have great results later in their ages, because I think the experience and the patience that comes with being in the sport for such a long time, that helps so much with your ability to ride the horses and train them. Right. So totally agree.
I had this conversation with Kyle King because I said to him, at 50, he's really hitting his stride. That's not uncommon. As a side note, for me as a Canadian, I don't think I had seen the Canadian flag raised at WEC ever when I was there. So I was just really proud to see the flag raised in the national anthem. I mean, that's a really big deal.
Oh,
I mean, I would say for sure revel in that, because it doesn't happen very often at those American venues. And you were in good company. It wasn't like the winter circuit at WEC this year had a lot of international riders and a lot of people that came up from Wellington. I think just because there was a lot of money offered and they thought it might be a little easier than being at WEF some weeks. So it wasn't like it was an easy win that you took home that day.
I mean, it is kind of funny. Like, I've been doing this for a while, but you still get a little starstruck,
Hmm.
all the times, right? Like in that class you're speaking about, I think Rodrigo Pessoa was
Hmm.
a fraction of a second behind me, and it's funny to think of that. And I rode in Rodrigo's saddles when I was younger, right? And he was always been such a star in the sport. And then you think there's Cian O'Connor as well in it, and Richie Vogel is younger, but he's coming back from winning at the Geneva Masters too, right? It's never easy to win in show jumping. It's hard even just getting podiums, right? So I think part of that too is balancing trying to be competitive and wanting to win, right? But also not wanting it so bad that you're pushing past the limits that you
Hmm.
have, right?
And also knowing that some days the horse is just off. I think it was Jenna Friedman Lopez when I was talking to her. She said you can go from hero to zero overnight. And it's really hard some days to deal with that part of the sport, that it's so humbling. I think what's kind of cool, as I said, in looking at your results, you've been very consistent. So you must be doing something right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's talk about Grande Dame because she's your more recent mount. And again, watching her in videos with you, she actually seems a lot more conventional, is how I would describe her. And very pretty mare, looks quite scopy, has really natural form. Talk to me a little bit about that ride.
Grand Dame is certainly newer. We've had her just over a calendar year now, so it's been nice. We've got the chance to develop together here at this point. I'm really excited about Grand Dame. She has a lot of quality that I've never really had all put together in a horse. So I'm really excited about that. I think she's got tremendous scope. Her age is younger, which is awesome for me. She's just entering her prime, I think. Her rideability and her willingness is phenomenal. It's just so great to ride those mares that really just come out and you get the feeling that they're your teammate there and they're really excited to come and work together. There's never a day where you hop on Grand Dame and think, oh, she doesn't want to be here. She doesn't want to work with me. It's so fun to have that. And she's got this big, huge stats that's adjustable, which is great. And she's super brave too, which is phenomenal feeling to have when you're going up into these classes with a lot of atmosphere and spooky fences. I've been super excited about how she's been developing and how I've been working with her. She's had a lot of really great podiums this year and had a nice win in the three-star qualifier earlier in the winter. I think the big thing is smoothing out the consistency on her. I think we're getting there. Like, to me, she's consistently putting in a great effort. I think it's little tweaks here and there now to just really put the whole picture together and then just developing her own confidence and making sure she stays really confident as we push higher and higher. Right. She's jumping phenomenal at the three-star level, which is great. And that push to the four and the five-star might only be another hole in the standards, but I think it can be still a big jump for the horses. So I think being really strategic about how we introduce her to the bigger levels is going to be key for her development next.
And is your hope that she potentially could be a team horse for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have that hope with a lot of horses, right? And you have to let them decide at the end of the day how they develop. But I absolutely see all the potential in the world with her. So I'm really excited.
I admire you for taking your time with her because I think, as you said earlier, sometimes there's a pressure to get to that higher level more quickly. And sometimes, as you said, just stepping back and letting her kind of decide when you're ready will have a big impact in terms of her confidence down the road. And it's just funny for me because I've had this conversation with a couple of people recently. One was actually Apollo Palazzo,
Yep.
the course designer. He talks so much about how important it is when he even develops his courses. He doesn't want it to be a challenge for the horse. He wants to be a challenge for the rider. And he talks about how that definitely impacts the confidence of the horse and the longevity of the horse. So I love to hear this from you're one of the younger riders out there. And the fact that you're talking like the legends that I speak with says a little bit about you must be an old soul, I'm going to guess.
Well, again, there's so much to learn, right? And there's so many opportunities to learn from these riders and trainers that have done it all in the sport. So part of that is just trying to pick up as much as you can, whether you're at the warm-up ring and listening or watching, or you have the chance to kind of audit a lesson that these guys are doing, or watching them in the competition ring. I think that's a phenomenal part of show jumping, the amount of knowledge and wisdom that's out there.
And do you have anybody that helps you day to day or on a regular basis when you're at the shows, or are you just using a ground person like your partner, or what's sort of your approach at the higher levels?
Been mostly on my own for the longest time being in the US, right? We've had the chance to get input from other trial professionals for a long time. Like a lot of people are really willing to help and give their feedback and their input into certain horses. You have maybe a problem or question. One of the great things again about show jumping and a lot of the trainers and riders in the sport is 99% of riders, if you go up and ask them a question, everyone's happy to give their honest feedback and input. And so it's to me, it's a great environment there to grow and learn a lot from each other. And I can't count the number of times I've just walked up to another trainer and said like, hey, I had a question about how you do this or that, and with this horse, or how you develop this one, what you prioritized, bit choices, etc., right? Warm-ups and everything. And so it's really cool. I think the amount of people who are willing to put their input and help in is awesome.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by the international law firm of Cooley LLP. Clients partner with Cooley on transformative deals, complex IP and regulatory matters, and high-stakes litigation. Cooley has nearly 1,400 lawyers across 19 offices in the United States, Asia, and Europe, and a total workforce of more than 3,000 people. Our connection to the law firm comes through Cooley partner and jumper rider Cullen Drescher, who competes in the high amateur and Grand Prix levels, in addition to leading Cooley's business restructuring practice from the firm's offices in New York City. I would tell you I have found the same thing doing this podcast. Everybody's been so generous in sharing their time and their thoughts, and I've learned so much. There's been a lot of things that I've adopted myself with my own ride, just based on having a conversation with a trainer, and I've sent my videos to some of them and got feedback, and it's just really, I agree with you. I think the community is very much a sharing community, and I'm not sure that everybody always knows that. So that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about Antrim, the farm itself, and all about your business, because as you said, it's new in terms of being back in Canada and establishing what you're doing and clients and what have you. So maybe talk a little bit about your approach with clients and training.
My vision has been, and I think for a long time, I really wanted to go back to Ontario and Canada. Spent a lot of time in the US, really enjoyed it, right? But at the end of the day, I'm Canadian, and I've always wanted to find a way to come back to Canada and train and have my organization based out of there. My vision was to bring a high performance team to Canada with the lessons that have been learned over the last 10 years from the organizational side, from competition with other five-star teams and riders, and from what we've learned from the sports science side, trying to integrate all that together into one program, especially for different riders, horse owners, whomever, that are really looking to take their competition to the next level. My idea was to expand my current team so that everyone could have access to it who wanted to, especially the people who want to chase the top sport.
So what does that look like day to day? Does Dr. Tim Warden, is he on staff there, or is he as a consultant? And then what does it mean on a practical level for your day-to-day training?
So Tim's a good friend of mine. He just gave a wonderful speech at my wedding in Mexico. That was a hit. Tim consults for us. He'll come in usually once a month or something like that. And we have a lot of phone calls there to just bounce ideas off of each other. A lot of it comes down to the teams. We have some fantastic riders who just joined, new grooms who just joined as well, assistant trainers who are in who can help as well with the logistics, travel, and make sure we can sort of be in two places at once, which is phenomenal. Day-to-day tip, it's hard to give a day-to-day when you have so many horses, and every horse is so unique in what they're doing. But we typically have a structured plan about how we're going to do our flat days, what we're going to focus on. We like to have at least one gymnastic day per week. We're going to really focus on the dexterity of the horses, and then one day of full jumping training where we can focus on developing the scope and making sure the fitness is there and all the pieces are put together. And we like to get the horses out of the ring too, go for hacks out in fields, up and down hills. I think that really helps the horse on the mental side, but on the physiological side too, it's nice to cross train as well. We like to have a lot of diversity, and then obviously depends too if a horse in the middle of a competition circuit needs some downtime, or if the horse is gearing up for competition, a week's going to look very different for each horse.
I think that's important to share. I feel like that sounds like a program. And to your point with the gymnastics, I thought it was very interesting when I spoke with McLean Moore that he has a ring dedicated strictly to gymnastics. He said one of the reasons was because he felt like if he didn't have a ring that was set up like that, it's a little bit of work to be doing that. And so then you can get away from the gymnastics, but it is an important element of their training. So I love hearing that from you, that you've got a day that's strictly gymnastic. And also that time, as you said, away from the ring, I think it can be so helpful, as you said, for a horse mentally to be able to get out there and just be in nature and be a horse, and yet you're still working them.
Yeah, I think anytime you can copy something McLean Ward's doing, it's nice. I think also from the sports science side, when we look at maybe the biomechanics of how a horse jumps, there's some interesting stuff that comes out of it. If you think of a 1.60 meter fence that a horse is going up to, typically a horse isn't elevating their body 1.6 meters up in the air. They'll actually typically elevate their bodies about a meter into the air, which doesn't seem like a lot. And then the rest of clearing that fence then comes down to their leg placement, their form with their legs, and whether they tuck them up or bring their front or their hind end forward or wherever, right? So you're looking at like 40% of the clearance of that fence is, at the end of the day, the dexterity of the horse and their own coordination with their feet. And we certainly feel like the gymnastics really isolates that and works on that specifically. And it's fun too for the horses and the rider as well. It's different. And again, we're just also trying to not put too much mental load on just flat work and just jumping. I think that kind of stuff, it's so much repetition, which is how the horse will learn for sure. But we just want to avoid too much making things stale for the horses as well.
I think a lot of times people forget that it's also meant to be fun.
Yeah.
And just getting to clear your head and be out on a hack with your horse and spend time with them that way, you learn so much about them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I also wanted to acknowledge, I didn't realize you'd gotten married recently.
Yeah. Just in January.
Well, congratulations to you and your wife. That's a big deal. And I'm glad you got to go away and celebrate it for a little bit before being back in the grind of the horse shows.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Well, I also wanted to ask, are you still part of the League of Nations? You were riding on the Northern Lights team.
Yeah, so that's Major League Show Jumping.
Oh, sorry, Major League.
League of Nations.
Right, is the long jeans, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, a member, I think it's been for 3 years now. This last year, I just did as a rider for the first half. And yeah, next year, I love the team. I love the management. I've always loved the idea there that it's a chance for especially Canadian riders to be on the 5-star team and compete in 5-star team events. We've certainly had phenomenal runs there where, some wins that I'm really, really proud of, especially in Ottawa a couple of years ago when we won that team event. It was myself, Liz Bates, and Nikki Walker, and to bring Canada a win on home soil on the nation's cap was so fun, and especially with the all-Canadian team. That was a really, really cool experience to have, and just have everybody there too, which was awesome as well. We had so much support from other team riders too, and definitely look back at that as a great memory.
And how does the Major League work? Does the team owner, do they approach you? Or I've never really fully understood how the system works. I just know that there's an owner that puts up a lot of money to be part of the league. But how does the actual selection process go?
I think it was a bit weird for me because I joined Jacqueline Patmore, the team manager, reached out to me the first year that Northern Lights came out. And most of the teams have team managers who are really involved in great horse people and who will be in charge typically of organizing the team riders and getting everyone set up. So Jacqueline reached out to me the first year and kind of explained the concept to me. And yeah, it was really cool too, because at that point in time, I didn't really have a ton of experience at that level for sure. And they took a bit of a chance on me to put me on the team, and that was a lot of fun.
I was thinking you Probably felt pretty honored when they called you, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
What's on the horizon for you? Do you have a short-term dream for this year and moving forward? I know we talked a little bit about the Pan Americans, and I feel like in Canada right now we're at a kind of interesting point where we don't have any givens for our next Canadian team going on to the Pan Americans and the Olympics. So maybe walk me through what you would potentially like to see happen if everything goes according to your plan.
So I think we actually just finished our schedule for the summer and fall right now. So that's exciting. I think part of it's just balancing right now the new business we have here in Ontario and with our international competition tour. The big thing for me I'm looking forward to is continuing developing Grand Dame. We've got a plan here on what we're going to do, as well as, again, Barcuga and Edness are getting a little bit older, making sure that we pick and choose our spots right for those two. Courtois, again, bit of a newer horse owned by Vortex. He's a younger horse that's really exciting. Again, just working on figuring out what his development path is going to be. So I think we have some younger horses that definitely could be in consideration for some major championships down the line. And at the end of the day, that's our goal.
And is your hope to go back out to Spruce Meadows this summer?
Yeah, that would be the hope for sure.
I kind of figured, but just thought I'd get the answer for our listeners because that'd probably be a question. Well, I want to say thank you so much for your time and your candor, Sean. I really appreciate it. And certainly we wish you the best for the future with your new-ish business. It's obviously the actual physical business has been more recent, but obviously your skill set is going to carry through with you from your years of experience that you've gleaned in the States and in Canada. And I really do have my fingers crossed that Grand Dame works into being as special as I think we're all seeing that she could be.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Catherine. I really appreciate it, and it was a blast.
If you'd like to learn more about upcoming guests, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Horsetails with Cat. And just a shout out to some new listeners in Toronto and my new listeners in Georgia and my regulars down in Virginia. And also a little bit of a shout out to Rachel Ford of phclothingco.com. She's really trying to get her business off the ground. So check her out on Instagram and online.